Sairam students, let's begin with the class 8 history, chapter 3 ruling the countryside, second part of this. Now let's go through the content of our chapter. The company becomes the Diwan, crops for Europe, and the Blue Rebellion in after. In that we already started with the first topic, that is the company becomes the Diwan. The topics that we have covered in our first session, just let's have a quick recap of that. We saw about the company becomes the Diwan, right? In that we saw on August 1765, the Mughal emperor appointed the East India Company as the Diwan of Bengal, right? Then as Diwan, the company became the chief financial administrator of the territory. They have to plan their strategies and everything according to the rights of the people. They were so that is we saw the company came to colonize the countryside, then organize the revenue resources also, and then they have to redefine the policies for the rights of the people. Then in the next topic we saw revenue for the company. In that we learned that the effort was to increase the revenue as much as it could and buy fine cotton and silk cloth bought by the company if it is possible and at a cheaper rates. But then again we saw in that Bengal there was a deep crisis. Bengal economy was facing a deep crisis, right? Then again a terrible famine was hit in Bengal in the year 1770. In that 10 million people were killed and about one third of the population was wiped out. Then the company thought that to have the good work that need to improve the agriculture is required. Then what they did, they adopted the policy of permanent settlement. Who started that? Charles Cornwallis. He was the Governor General of India when the permanent settlement was introduced. Now, what was that permanent settlement? It was the Rajas and the Talukdars were recognized as Zamindars. So they were asked to collect rent from the peasants and pay revenue to the company. And even the amount that they were paying was fixed permanently, so that it was not, and even that was not to be increased even in future also. Then the next we saw again the problem with that permanent settlement. What was the problem? That the revenue that they have fixed was so high that the zamindars found it difficult to pay, right? That's why numerous zamindaris they sold off and they were auctioned, that were organized by the company. And even they were not interested in improving. Zamindars were did not have any interest in improving the land also, right? Then the next we saw again a new system is devised. What was the new system? In the northern western provinces of the Bengal presidency, an Englishman called Holt Mackenzie, he devised a new system that called as the Mahalwari system, right? In that, what did we see in that Mahalwari system? Under that, the direction the collectors went from village to village. They were inspecting the land, they were measuring the fields and recording the customs and rights of different groups, and estimated revenue of each plot within a village and added up to calculate the revenue that each village has to pay. And village was also called as mahal, right? So this is what we have learnt in our session. Now let's see what is the new system, that is the Monroe system. The British territories in the south, there was a similar move away. See, previously that Mahalwari system was started in northwestern provinces, right? But now they have focused on the south. Move away from the idea of permanent settlement. The new system that was devised came to be known as the Rayotwari system. Now let's see what is that Rayotwari system. It was tried on a small scale by Captain Alexander Reed in some of the areas that were taken over by the company after the wars with Tipu Sultan. You all remembered in our last chapter we have learnt about the war with the Anglo-Mysore war with Tipu Sultan. Subsequently developed by Thomas Munro, this system was gradually extended all over South India. So Reed and Munro felt that in the south there was no traditional zamindars. The settlement, they argued, had to be made directly with the cultivators. Here cultivators means the ryots. Cultivators were called as ryots, who had tilled the land for generations. Their fields had to be carefully and separately surveyed before the revenue assessment was made. So this is what Munro thought, that the British should act What was the Monroe's thought? Thought that the British should act as the paternal father figures protecting the ryots under their charge. Thomas Monroe, he was the governor of Madras. He governed it from 1819 till 1826. So this was the thought that came to his mind. So the new system that was devised was after permanent settlement was Ryotwari system. But then again, all was not well in that system also. Within a few years, again the new system were imposed. It was clear that all was not well with them. Driven by the desire to increase the income from land, revenue officials fixed too high a revenue demand. So actually, what when the revenue was too high, the peasants were unable to pay. So riots fled the countryside. Again, they started deserting, and the villages became deserted in many regions. So finally, again, the optimistic officials they had imagined that the new systems would transform the peasants into rich, enterprising farmers. But this could not happen. Let's move further. They tried many more things, but then now their focus has gone towards growing the crops, new crops, so that the people will be in the same village only. They will not be deserted from that village. Now, the next topic we are going to cover in this is crops for Europe. Under that, we have many more subtopics. Does color have a history? Then the next topic, why the demand for Indian indigo? Then Britain turns to India. Then how was indigo cultivated? Then the problem with the nits cultivation. Then indigo on the land of ryots. Then how was indigo produced? So these are the topics that we are going to cover one by one. Crops for Europe. Now you can see the British also realized that the countryside could not only yield revenue, it could also grow the crops that Europe required. So what they did by the late 18th century, the company was trying its best to expand the cultivation. Now here you can see the images have been given to you in this slide, that is opium and indigo. So, in the century and a half that followed, the British pursued it, forced cultivators in various parts of India to produce other crops also. Now, let's see what are the other crops. Now, here first is jute in Bengal. You can see the images have been given in this slide. First is jute in Bengal, then they were forced to produce tea in Assam, then sugar cane in the United Provinces is also the present it is called as Uttar Pradesh. Remember that thing. If United Provinces is there, then it means that is Uttar Pradesh. Then wheat in Punjab, then cotton in Maharashtra and Punjab, then rice in Madras. So how was this done? The British used a variety of methods to expand the cultivation of crops that they needed. Now, what are the methods that they follow? Let us take a closer look at the story of one each crop in one such method of production. Now, here in this our chapter, the indigo has been focused here because Britishers were focusing on the indigo cultivation. Now, does color have a history? Here you can see in this image the two prints have been given to you, two cotton prints, images of the cotton prints is given. First one is the Kalamkari print that is in the 20th century, and the second one is the Morris cotton print that was in the late 19th century that has been done in England. Now, these two images tells you about the cotton prints, right? I told you one is the Kalamkari print that has been created by the weavers of Andhra Pradesh in India. And on the right is the floral cotton print that is designed and produced by the William Morris, a famous poet and artist of 19th century from Britain. There is if you will observe this too, there is one common thing in the two prints. Both use a rich blue color that commonly called as indigo. Do you know how this color was produced? Now, the blue that you see in this prints was produced from a plant called indigo. I showed you that plant indigo in the previous slide. It is likely that the blue dye was manufactured from indigo plants cultivated in India. For India, was the biggest supplier of indigo in the world at that time. Now let's move to the next topic, that is why the demand for Indian indigo increased in our country. The indigo plant grows primarily in the tropics. So by the 13th century, Indian indigo was being used by cloth manufacturers in Italy, France, and Britain to dye cloth. However, only small amounts of Indian indigo reached the European market and its price was very high. So what that, because of the prices, European cloth manufacturers, they thought they had to depend on another plant that is called as woad. Here I have given you the image of that woad to make violet and blue dyes. Being a plant of the temperate zone, woad was more easily available in Europe. As the prices of indigos were high, that is the reason they thought of having the alternative, that is for the woad plant. It was grown in northern Italy, southern France, and in parts of Germany and Britain. But worried by the competition from indigo, wood producers in Europe pressurized their governments to ban the import of indigo. Then what happened? See, after that again, the cloth dryers, however, they preferred indigo as a dye because indigo produced a rich blue color, whereas the dye that they were doing from the wood, that was pale and dull. It means they were not satisfied with that color of the dye. So by the 17th century, again European cloth producers, they persuaded their governments to relax the ban on indigo import. So the French began cultivating indigo in Saint Domingue in the Caribbean islands, even the Portuguese in Brazil, the English in Jamaica, and the Spanish in Venezuela. Then finally, indigo plantations also came up in many parts of North America. Now here the meaning of plantation has been given to you. It is a large farm operated by a planter employing various forms of forced labor. Plantations are associated with the production of coffee, sugarcane, tobacco, tea, and coffee. But cotton. By the end of the 18th century, again the demand for Indian indigo grew further. Then Britain began to industrialize and its cotton production expanded dramatically, creating an enormous new demand for cloth dyes. But while the demand for indigo increased, its existing supplies from the West Indies and America collapsed for a variety of reasons. But then again in the year 1783 and from 1783 to 1789, the production of indigo in the world fell by half. So cloth dyers in Britain, what they were desperately looking for the new resources of indigo supply. Now from where they could get, they have to come to our country, India. That is the reason Britain turns to India. Then faced with the rising demand for indigo in Europe, the company in India looked for ways to expand the area under indigo cultivation. So finally, Britain has to turn towards the India for the indigo plantation, right? Then from the last decades of the 18th century, indigo cultivation in Bengal expanded rapidly, and even Bengal indigo came to dominate the world market. In 1788, only about 30% of the indigo imported into Britain was from India. See, I'm showing you the comparison here. In 1788, only 30% was imported to Britain, right? But the same in 1810, the proportion had gone up to 95%. So you can have the judgment like the dependency of cultivation of indigo on India, how the percentage has changed. As the indigo trade grew, the commercial agents and officials of the company, they began investing in indigo production. As everybody could see, there is more profit in indigo production, so everybody wants to invest more in that. So over the years, many company officials, they left their jobs to look after their indigo business. Even they started joining the indigo business, attracted by the prospect of high profits. Even numerous Scotsmen and Englishmen, they came to India and they became planters here in our country, India. So those who had no money to produce, even they were helped. Indigo, those who were unable to have the enough money for the production of indigo could get loans from the company and the banks that they were coming at that time. So this is how we have seen that in India the indigo plantation increased at a very large scale. So this is what we have learnt in the today's session. We saw the last topic as Britain turns to India. Still many more are there. We'll be continuing in the next session. But before that, let's have the quick recap of the main points that we have covered in this session. We started with that Monroe system, right? We saw in that Monroe system who started that. Thomas Monroe. He was the Governor General of Madras, right? In that, what was there? They started the Reed and Monroe. They both started it together. Felt that in the south there was no traditional zamindars. So the settlement they argued and to be made directly with the cultivators. Here cultivators means a riot. That was also called as a riotwari system, right? But then all was not well in that system. Again, we saw driven by the desire to increase the income from land, revenue officials fixed too high. So the peasants were unable to pay, and the riots fled the countryside again, and the villages became deserted. Then again, the company thought of the new policy. They started focusing on the crops for Europe. Okay. Then the next topic we have covered here is crops for Europe. We saw there in that they indicated they wanted to expand the cultivation of opium and indigo much more, right? And apart from that, the other crops that they were focusing were jute in Bengal, tea in Assam, sugarcane in the United Provinces. I told you United Provinces means Uttar Pradesh. Then wheat in Punjab, cotton in Maharashtra and Punjab, and rice in Madras. This is what they started focusing in that crops for Europe. But then we saw about the two prints, cotton prints images were given to you, in that we saw does color have a history. One was a kalamkari print and another one was a Morris cotton print, right? Then the next we saw why the demand for Indian indigo increased. We saw that India was the biggest supplier of indigo in the world at that time, right? Indigo plant grows in the tropical region, so that is the reason India has got the suitable climate that is good for the cultivation of indigo. But then again the Europeans they were focusing on another plant also. They tried with other plant, that is wood, but they couldn't do it well with that because that was not giving the color. The dye of that color was not satisfactory as that of the indigo plant, right? It was dull and pale. The board was giving them the dull and pale color. So they want to focus only on indigo plantation. That is the reason all the countries, everybody like European countries, they wanted to have the indigo plantation from our country. That is the reason again Britain turns towards our country, India. Then we saw from the last decades of the 18th century, indigo cultivation in Bengal expanded, right? And we saw the percentage also in 1788, only about 30% of the indigo imported into Britain, right, from our country, India. But the same percentage increased in the year 1810 by 95. That percentage reached to 95%. So we could see there was much more dependency of for indigo plantation, indigo cultivation on for our in our country. So this is what we have seen, like how the Britain turns to India for the indigo plantation. Now still further, how the indigo was cultivated, then what were the problem in that cultivation, then again how the indigo was produced, everything. And then the last topic, that is the Blue Rebellion, we are going to see in the third session, in the last session of that chapter. So till then, go through the slides and take care.